We'll call the meeting to order. Agenda, does anybody have anything to add? I know I do here. I have another community grant that I will get from the Municipal and Hubbard's Point Volunteer Fire Department. And we're going to add the for decision that we overlooked, I guess, new board member for the airport board. So we'll have to make a decision on that. Anybody else have anything to add?
What was the new board member when you put that? Which one?
7F for decision, yes.
7F.
Yes. And so, motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Any conflict of interest declaration from anyone? And again, it's something that if something comes up, we can always deal with it at that time. So, first thing that we have a couple of presentations. And the first presentation from the Western Wren Atlantic Immigration Pilot and Gino Thibeault. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Your worship, councilors. My name is Gino Thibeault. I'm with the Western Regional Enterprise Network. I'm just here to do a quick presentation on the Atlantic Immigration Pilot. First of all, there we go. What is the REN? Of course, we all know about the Regional Enterprise Network. Regional Enterprise Network in the province of Nova Scotia are business facing and are here to deal with businesses through leadership, regional strategies, relationships, community business, information, business climate, partnerships, and municipal collaboration. Just a quick overview of the REN. It's always a good idea. This slide is because there's many pathways through immigration, and I think we've all heard in the news recently about the Atlantic Immigration Pilot. Well, that is just the dark green lines. All the other lines are still there, okay? What is light green is what the province works with for the nominee programs, and everything that's in blue is federal government stuff. The Atlantic Immigration Pilot was designed to address the unique labor needs of Atlantic Canada. It was developed by the federal government with the collaboration of the provincial government. It actually doubled the number of nominees for Atlantic Canada to about 2,800 for Nova Scotia for 2017. We didn't get the numbers for 18 yet, but they expect them to be around the same thing. It's a golden opportunity for Nova Scotia. I guess it gives us an opportunity to bring more people in, have more people in our communities. Why is this so important? Well, this is the Western region, our population. And what's very important is if you look at the top two tiers, which is from 45 to 64 and 65 plus, more than half our population is there. Right? So that eventually is going to impact our workforce. Okay. To be eligible for the Atlantic Immigration Pilot, there's 3 streams within it. There's the intermediate skills, which is actually unique to the pilot. There is no other stream for intermediate skilled workers. For a permanent basis, I should say. The temporary foreign workers is a whole different beast. High skills, there were streams previously, but this is a quicker path. And the International Graduate Program, which allows employers to hire international students from Atlantic Canadian universities right out of universities. Usually they'd have to have 1 year of work experience under their belt. So once they're here, we want to keep them, right? The key benefits for businesses, it's a much faster process. There's an interim work visa that's given while they wait. The huge thing is they were able to skip the labor market impact assessment. International graduates can be hired right out of school, of course, and it's a permanent labor workforce solution. Now, even if they can't skip the labor impact assessment, they still have, part of the program, they still have to prove that they've tried to hire somebody locally, of course. Okay? It's just a little bit less complicated. What's new for business? The Atlantic Immigration Pilot applies to a broader range of jobs, which the intermediate skill set. The language requirement was actually lowered to Canadian language benchmark 4 instead of 5, which is the standard for all other streams. Now, part of the program is if somebody comes in at a 4, you have to facilitate to get them up to a 5. Okay, and just so you know, 4 and 5 is basic communication skills at work. So lower than that, you wouldn't even be able to communicate on the job site. Okay. How do we start? Well, first step is to apply for designation. Second thing is to contact a settlement service organization and then apply for endorsement. There's a big emphasis on the settlement piece because we want these people to come in, but we want them to stay. Because the beauty of this pilot, it's made for the primary applicant, but the idea is to bring that person, their spouse, their kids, so there's more people in our schools, more people buying goods, more people roll the economy, right? These are numbers as of December 1st, because that's the slide I sent you. Now I have the updated numbers, so we'll give you verbally the updated numbers. 341 December 1st, as of January 18th, there was 388 employers that had applied to be designated. 296 employers had been designated, and 337 compared to 242 endorsement applications. That's where the employer has found their candidate, gave them a job offer, and now is applying to the province for their endorsement to proceed to the federal government. Okay. Endorsement applications approved, 174. Well, as of January 18th, it was actually 235. So it's something that started a little bit, I don't want to say a little bit slow, but a little bit slow, right? Like any new program, it takes a little bit of time to get off the ground, and now we're seeing that the ball is rolling, so it's going well. It's a huge opportunity for us, and what we ask of you is tell your centers of influence, tell your friends, tell your leaders, tell yourselves, and repeat. It's a message that we want to send to our employers locally. It's a really good opportunity to find very good or very qualified labor, and we need it. We're in a spot where, unfortunately, there's some positions that we do need this type of program to help. Right? Any questions?
Any questions, anybody?
Just to be clear, success to December 1st, I guess you gave us the update till January 18th. The 300, I'm just reading it, 341 employers have applied. Is that for our region or for the province?
To the province.
Okay, just
yeah.
wanted to be, I figured, I didn't even know if we had 341 employers in all of our region, right?
Yeah, we probably have a little bit more than that. But because of confidentiality, we try to keep the numbers for the province, because really we don't want to, there's so many people that are looking for this program, in immigrants and everything. We get, I get emails from immigrants applying for jobs, right? So if we would announce who is the designated employers, they would just be overwhelmed, right? Now, there are options to help them find that person, or facilitate, I should say. And they're out there. I mean, the Department of Immigration goes to many trade missions where they will, if you have a position, they will bring the information, and if they find somebody that matches, they'll organize a Skype interview with them and everything. So there are things to help.
Councilor Murphy?
So how many in this region of, say, Argyle, Yarmouth, in the surrounding, just the surrounding area? Because I know that it's a real big issue for finding workers to work in fish plants. Like,
Yeah.
I know that.
Well, fish plants are a little, you see, Atlantic Immigration Pilot is made for permanent workforce, so it has to be a full-time job. Fish plants are usually seasonal,
Yes.
or sometimes 2 seasons or whatever. In that case, depending on the position you're looking to fill, the temporary foreign worker program might actually be the best way to go. And honestly, that's, when they announced the numbers in the media, unfortunately, there was, the Office of Immigration in Nova Scotia is doing a terrific job of, if they see something that would be a better fit through another program, they'll guide the person through that other program. So this is, like I said, there's many paths through immigration. This is not the only one. It is a good one. It's a new one for us. It's an easier one for businesses. I used to own, pardon me, I used to own a Chinese restaurant, and we'd bring in cooks regularly. 10, 15, 20 years ago now. I'm getting old. And if the process was extremely painful, right? This process is very simplified, very easy. It's made for the small business, and that's my role, to help the small business to be able to travel through that process, right?
Yeah, so it's like you were saying there, 65 and over, like, there's a lot of people that are 65 and over, me for one, and
And that's not a bad thing, because that's an opportunity for other things,
Yes.
right? It's just that labor force, if you look at strict labor force, it probably will become an issue quite soon.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, I know that I can do things that my mind tells me I can do, my body won't let me handle it. So, and so there's a lot of, I know there's fish plants in the area that have foreign workers, immigrants that come from abroad.
Yep.
And they house them, and they and they're real good workers, like very good workers.
Yep.
They're there,
But this is, because those fish plants also have full-time employees.
yes.
Right? And so it's something to look at, because eventually the full-time employees are either gonna retire, right? So it's something to look at, because it takes a certain amount of time to get designated, right? And once you're designated, then you can recruit internationally. And your designation as a company sticks with you for the duration of the pilot. And right now, the pilot, it was a 3-year pilot, so in March, there'll be 2 years left. So your designation stays with you. So even if you get designated today, it doesn't mean you have to hire internationally today, but you're ready for it, right? If that resume comes in that's, I can't let this one pass, right? I have to hire this person. Well, you're ready. It's the steps that you don't have to take later, right?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Warden?
Just a few comments. I was at the agriculture conference last week in Halifax.
Yes.
And that was a big issue, was the labor force.
Yep.
So, I mean, there was numerous government officials there throwing stats at us, but one that stuck in my mind was our unemployment rate for rural Nova Scotia generally is 9 to 10%.
Yep.
And that problem is gonna fix itself just because of the population age in rural Nova Scotia. I mean, they're gonna
Yep.
eventually die off, and you're gonna be left with a very small labor force that can't fill the void of jobs, or fill the job market, I mean. And so immigration is gotta happen in Nova Scotia, and hopefully some of it in rural Nova Scotia. But another thing I noticed tonight on the news, they had a study on post-secondary students in the Maritimes and what percentage leave the Maritimes, and it's extremely high, like over 50%. So maybe that's the reason they've loosened up the regulations on foreign students. So it's just an observation.
A lot of these foreign students are already here and they enjoy living here,
Yeah.
right? They were educated here, they want to stay. So this is an opportunity for us to keep them here. And when you hire somebody from abroad, well, if they bring their family with them, we all know once the kids are in school and make friends, you're here, you're stuck. You're not going anywhere, right? So, and that's the idea. We want to help our communities grow. And by bringing other people, then it's one way. It's not the only way, but it's one way, it's one thing that we currently have that we can work with.
Very good program.
Anybody else? I have just one question, like, okay, let's say there's a employer who needs someone and they need them. How long does it take to get someone down?
And there's a few it depends, okay? Usually, right now, it takes about 3 weeks for the the designation to be approved.
Yes.
Then, if you've already found your person, then you don't need to look for it. It takes about 3 to 4 weeks. This is what the Office of Immigration is telling us, okay? 3 to 4 weeks for them to process the endorsement application and then transfer it to the federal government. Now, depending on what country that person is from, it could be as quick as a week after that process. It can take a year, right? And that goes with, depending on the country that Canada has agreements with. Example, somebody from the United States, Mexico, would be a lot quicker than somebody from Iraq or Nigeria, or, right? Depending on where you are in the world, it does make a difference.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
So I could get a hold of you and
Yeah.
if I needed
Yeah.
to get designated.
Yes, get a hold of me, and I'll meet with you, explain in detail every step. And then if it's something you want to go forward with, then we fill in the application together and we send it up. Once you're designated, then it's just to find the right person.
I'd like to do that sooner than later, you know.
Yeah. I think you have my contact information,
Yeah, I
so
do.
just give me a phone call, and for sure, I'd be that's what I do, that's what I enjoy doing, yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no more questions, thank you very much for the presentation. Again, very, very good program, no doubt.
Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Thanks.
You too.
So the next, we have another presentation from the Mariner Center, Gail Dares. And before we begin, I just want to pass on that we have one regret from Councillor Digby, by the way, which I didn't mention at first. Mr. Dares.
Yes, good evening, and thank you very much for allowing me this opportunity, and particularly since I know that typically you will only have one presentation per meeting, and so it's a last minute request, and I very much appreciate the ability to be here. The Mariner Center, as you know, operates 2 ice surfaces, and so on a historical basis, we have to replace our ice resurfacer. And typically, they'll burn out in the area of about 5,500 to 6,000 hours. That's where we find ourselves today, is we've got the newest of our 2 Zambonis that we maintain. Actually, the oldest one has about 6,300 hours on it, and the newest one has just under 6,000. In other arenas, that's about 8 years of use. In other arenas, for example, our neighbors in Barrington, they might have an ice resurfacer that lasts 15 years, but considering that they've only got 1 ice surface to do, not 2, and considering that they don't have nearly the number of hours of ice usage, so we've got a significant amount of floods that are done over and above a small town arena. So our equipment typically fails, about 6 to 8 years. So last year, we included in the budget, in fact, it's been on the table for a couple of years now, but last year we put in the budget for a new ice resurfacer. We did the research, we compared the Zamboni with the Olympia, and for a number of reasons, we chose Zamboni to go with. And after the budget was submitted, because that was around, I think for a new unit was about $107,000, but it included, one of the options that we need to include is viscous couplings front end. In our arena, every time the Zamboni enters or departs the ice surface, and this is a design flaw, the unit has to turn 90 degrees. And because the wheels are all turning at the same rate, the outside wheel, every time, will spit the studs in. So we end up, we need the studded tires. You can't navigate on the ice without studded tires, so we're losing studs. We've got a barn full of perfectly good tires that don't have studs. We've tried to send them back to a company to have them restudded, and they don't hold. So we end up buying, a set of $800 or $900 tires more frequently than we should. This viscous coupling front end will allow us to turn the radius, and it allows the wheels to turn at different speeds, so we won't have the same kind of stress on the studs. The other option that we looked at was called the latex laser leveling system. And what this does is it takes a lot of we have several different operators, and this takes the decision away from the operator, and it actually applies it to the technology. So the technology decides how deep the scrape has to be and how heavy the flood has to be. What you end up with is you have less floods, so you have less of an ice or a snow buildup. You have less water consumption, and that's important to us because we pay a significant amount of money for water. We have the large valve rate because we're on the town system, and for every gallon of water that comes in, we pay for a gallon of sewage going out, even though it doesn't go into the sewer, it goes into the groundwater. But that's the way that the system's designed. So this will cut down significantly on our water consumption. It'll also give you a better playing surface, because what's happened now is that the unit itself controls the scrape and controls the level of the things. So you're going to have better puck action, better ice surface, and it's going to reduce the costs overall, because even blade replacement, we typically replace a blade on the Zamboni about once a week or more often at times. And the dull blades have to be shipped to Dartmouth because there's no place else to get them sharpened. So you take a 65 or 75 blade and you bundle them all up in casing, and then you ship them off to Dartmouth, and you wait a week or so to get them back. This new system should reduce the amount of times that the blades have to be replaced. It'll cut it in half. So we're hoping to get like upwards of 2 weeks out of a blade rather than just 1 week. So you're cutting your shipping costs alone in half. So for a number of reasons, the leveling system seemed to be a good option. The other thing about the leveling system is that the main unit is about $20,000. There's an auxiliary unit because we have a second ice surface, and what happens is that it works off of a GPS. We've found the high spot in each arena, and that's loaded into the computer, and then the high spot controls where the levelers are. It takes the decision-making, as I say, away from the operator. So, we've had, everybody does the ice differently. And So some guys add more water than others, some guys do a heavier scrape, but everybody has their own way of doing it. This actually takes the decision-making away. One of the good things about that is that we have an aging staff, nobody there that's under 50. And so if we have to bring somebody in and train them in the use of the Zamboni, it's a lot easier to train them on this technology because it's really almost idiot-proof. But why I'm here today is that this was included in the budget submission last year, and through miscommunication, and that's the only way I can describe it, as when we checked with the owners of the facility, it had been approved in the budget, and unfortunately, that request hadn't been forwarded to your council. So although it was identified as a capital item, and nobody actually came to your council to say, are you interested in cost sharing? So my job here tonight is to ask you to consider that. The new unit will be delivered sometime in mid-March. The total cost of it before HST is approximately $121,000, I think, $121,000, about $41,000 per, if it was a three-way split. So I'd ask you to consider possibly cost sharing the unit. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Questions? Councilor Surratt?
If council considered supporting this request, would that mean we own a piece of the equipment?
I would say yes.
Just a question. 'Cause
Yeah, no, I mean,
wasn't
yeah.
sure. Because we give on, the way we're set up, if I remember right, and this CEO can correct me, we fund the deficit, I believe.
Yes.
And that's what our
Fund
agreement is,
yes.
operating deficit.
Just to clarify the agreement, so the agreement is 1/3 operating deficits, and the idea was that the ownership would be retained by the town and municipality. That's very clear on building and major equipment. I would consider the Zamboni to be major equipment. So it would be a contribution, and so the agreement is clear. Anything capital, the town and municipality are to request the municipality of Argyle whether you would voluntarily contribute towards that piece of equipment. There's no formula, there's no indication of how much, like it's not, you know, you can either say 1/3 or 0, there's nothing, there's no guidance. So if you're interested in supporting this purchase, then it's up to you to decide how much you would support it for. That's really what the agreement says.
Anybody else?
Well, with the level of activity from municipality of Argyle, I'm sure it's at least 1/3, based on all the kids that are playing hockey and figure skating and men's leagues and whatnot, so I don't see how we can't be part of this Zamboni, so I'm willing to support it.
I'll second it.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, I'll make it a
Sorry.
motion, I guess. We have a seconder, so
We have a seconder. Now, in
it's
the
for
motion,
1/3,
That was just my
1/3.
question.
yeah.
1/3.
Any questions
This
on the
year
motion?
For this year, for the next year's budget, or?
Good question.
When's it being delivered?
It won't be delivered until mid-March.
March.
What would you prefer? We're on the borderline, right?
Well, it depends on where you intend the money to come from. I think that the total amount, including your portion of HST, would be 42,227. That's what 1/3 represents.
Some close.
Yeah, I did the math. I had a calculator. I rounded. So, so that's the number. It could come out of your operating, your accumulated operating surplus of previous years, or could come out of capital reserve. There's a chance that there would be sufficient surplus this year to cover it. However, there are other things that could influence that are later on in the agenda. To be honest, if you're willing to do the investment from a fiscal perspective, it doesn't matter if it's this year or next year.
Okay, so
It really is, it's your choice.
I do think it's
So I'm not even gonna put that in the motion then.
So,
Okay,
but before before I vote on it, so the other two units obviously know about this and they've, have they,
Yeah, this was actually identified to me when the invoices, what happens, because the town handles our finances, when Mr. Brereton sent out the invoices to the two municipal units asking for their payment, that's when it became clear that this had never been addressed at your council.
okay.
So,
So they're fine with that.
yes.
I guess I was just checking just in case they had decided to go 50/50. Well, you know.
Very good, I love it,
Good, good.
I love it.
Yes.
It's wishful thinking, but I,
Question?
Any questions at all? All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded?
once again,
Carried.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
42,227.
Okay, we'll move on. The next item is Council Priority Progress Report. There isn't a whole lot of changes in the progress report from the last meeting and the last time that we looked at it, right? I don't believe there's been a whole lot of movement on any of the,
Yeah, I would say that's correct. Wedgeport wastewater and the admin building are moving, but we're into winter on the Wedgeport project, so that hasn't moved significantly. It will finish by March or April. The municipal admin building will move once we complete the tendering process. The construction will not begin before the end of March. But, so where we felt like we could potentially begin construction in the fiscal year, that will not be achieved. So what we'll get to is 80%, but then, you know, a month and a half or so, or less, that will go to 100. And I guess if we were really like lying to ourselves, we could say that, you know, digging holes and like cutting trees down is actually beginning the construction. So if we wanted to like say that, then I guess that would be true too.
yeah. Any questions on the report?
Comment, I guess, if
Or
I may.
comment, yes.
We're gonna soon be having our priority session for this upcoming year, setting priorities. I was just wondering if we could get some information from the REN on our internet, where we stand there, because it's getting more and more frustrating by the day for us that do not have high-speed internet. So, I think this one, well, I'm gonna vote for, we have 4 priorities this year. It's gonna be number 1, 2, 3, and 4 on my list.
Yes, Councilor Sray.
Coming to the administration building, I'd like to ask the CEO, there was some vehicles in the ditch there, around there, and all kinds of stuff. The question, when we saw the big truck, a lot of questions came around at work about what those trucks were doing there.
Sure.
So there were stories, and a lot of people I know probably are looking, and they were digging wells. I said, no, they're not digging wells.
No.
So what were the trucks doing there, and did that come from your committee? I found out what they were there for, but if you would explain it, did it come from the committee, did he get approval from council, or how does that work? Like,
Well, it's
the trucks were there for, what were they there for?
yeah. So the trucks were there to do some testing regarding the geotube heating, potential geotube heating system. So they had to do some digs to understand what was there. So it's essentially testing that it was required in order to try to get to our net zero efficiency. So it's part of our renewable energy planning. So, but you know, I imagine there's a lot of people interested in what's going on, and so as those things happen, we'll try to put that information out as it's happening. More so, this one was not, I won't say it's a surprise. We knew it was coming, but I think, you know, we figured that once we get into the tendering process, that would be when the information would come out more regularly. But yeah, so they're just doing the testing, and that
Was that an expensive venture to do that? Because I'm sure it costs money to get that.
Oh, yeah.
Done.
Yep. It was, I think the bill was 21 or 20,000.
Was that much?
Yeah, but it's part of the cost of doing the geothermal heating system. So, you know, that's the heating system that we've recommended through this process. And, you know, and it's also gas tax eligible, so that's not taxpayers' municipal tax dollars that we'll be paying.
That was a question.
Yeah, and just to remind everyone, there's a reason why we're trying to get to net zero. There's a Federation of Canadian Municipality grant and loan program for buildings that are constructed at net zero, meaning operating cost of zero, like no carbon footprint, okay? I shouldn't say operating cost of zero, all renewable energy, right? Everything renewable, nothing, no carbon footprint is probably I know it's not entirely an accurate statement, but it's, you get the idea. So if we can get there and we have a good application, the result of that would be that a low interest loan with a 15% grant component to it. So the 15% grant component would make a huge difference on this project. We have no guarantee that we'll get that funding, but the fact that it would be net zero puts us in a very, very strong position, and we will be putting the applications in and doing, you know, putting our best foot forward. So 15% on a $2.7 million project is a little over 400,000. And that would be the grant component. So, and that doesn't eliminate us the opportunity to use gas tax on the gas tax eligible additions. So solar, geo heating. If we were to do another renewable energy opportunity on site, all those things would still attract gas tax. You can still use your gas tax in that program. So what we're trying to do is, again, is shift the cost away from the capital reserve, which was municipal dollars, and to federal and other dollars, so we can go back to our residents and say, look, this is, we're happy we built it right, and other people supported us to do it. So.
Makes sense. Thank you. Thank you for that info.
Yep. Anybody else? Then we'll move on. Item number 5, which is financial report.
Director of Finance, Marcia gives her regrets. She was able to come Tuesday, but not able to come today. So I'll just very quickly do a high-level assessment. So the operating fund surplus at the end of December is showing a projection of 168,000 and change. That is what you see as surplus as 190 includes West Pubnico, Tusket, and East Pubnico water utility. So the actual amount that relates to every taxpayer is 169,000. So on the revenue side, the D-transfer tax is still being collected faster than we anticipated. It's showing a $21,000 positive amount. That usually slows down in January, February, March. So you may not, it may continue, but what we've seen is that, you know, at the end of the year, that may not be as high as we're predicting. So in terms of revenues, all the other revenues have been fairly close to budget. The only exception is how much money has been taken from the operating reserve for the Dominion Textiles project. We prorated that budget, so what we expected, technically we expected it to be substantially complete by the end of December, and so the actual cost shows the higher amount, but because we prorate our budget, the budget's only showing 9/12 of that. So that $919,000 amount is likely going to be over budget. It will, once it exceeds 950,000, which was our budget for the year, I'll have to come to you to be sure that we're okay with that. I think those of you that are at the Industrial Commission meeting understand what's happening, and we did deal with the tipping fee question, which is on the agenda, so. And in terms of expenses, there's savings. The major areas of savings are in administration. There's a lot of office building supplies and repairs that we simply just didn't do. Just, you know, either we didn't do it yet or we're not gonna do it. A lot of small amounts, so I'm not gonna go line by line on those. Employer benefits are down about 11,000 compared to what we expected. Sometimes that's just timing on when people get onto plans, and there's a variety of factors that can impact that, and there's also the way that we budgeted council-related benefits. There was a bit of a duplication there, so we'll be showing a positive number at the end of the year. Other areas would include recreation, airport. Currently, we're expecting the cost to be $9,000 less than what we anticipated. We had anticipated two amounts. One was Economic Development Initiative and the other was the operating grant. The operating grant will be as budgeted, but the Economic Development Initiatives will not get to the full amount. We're quite certain of that. So I'm reflecting that now. And then currently we've spent very little in unsightly and dangerous premises. It was budgeted that we would spend $26,000 and we've only spent $4,700 of that so far. January and February we'll see some increases. We will have some properties that we will be having to spend some money on that. And so at a future meeting, we will be bringing a couple of these issues for you for your information and potentially your approval depending on what we do. As you know, demolition cannot be done without council's approval unless it's an emergency demolition. Then it can be done by the by the officer, the bylaw enforcement officer, or the building inspector official. And all the other cleanups can be done by that person and do not require approval from council. And lastly, we have some small savings in economic development, and recreation has about $18,000 lower than expected, and that is that could close, that gap could close, but typically what happens there is there's usually a little surplus because a lot of things are anticipated that don't necessarily happen. And then the courthouse is also showing a positive surplus, and repairs and maintenance being not done yet according to the budget, and that's the reason why it's higher than that there's a savings in that area. And that's pretty much it. Are there any comments or questions regarding the activity?
Comment, I guess, that looks like a pretty healthy surplus for the end of December, but lots of times it can be a case of timing, right? And now, all your years of experience of doing our budget at this time of year, what's the number you were looking at conservatively for the end of March?
I think that it would be based on our progress. I think there'll be a couple of areas that we may spend a little bit more than we thought that will offset the surplus. I expect that an amount that we could expect is around 150. I think as the months go by, that number may change depending on decisions that you're going to be making. Like for instance, when I say that, the Zamboni would be included in that number, right?
That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, so that there's that, and then there's a decision around whether or not, like, we had made a decision that we were going to pull operating reserves to pay for the Dominion textiles. Well, at some point you might use your current surplus to do that rather than pull it from a reserve, right? So those decisions will impact your surplus as well, but 150 I think would be reasonable without the Zamboni decision. Yeah.
Other questions? Councillor Swift?
I'll add where the waste part we're hoping at the meeting next Wednesday, the board of directors hopefully will, I don't see a problem, but we'll look at and then forgive the charge on the waste that was brought there, except for their costs on their overhead on what they had to hire a little, some extra dozers and excavators and that. Anyhow, that'll be discussed. I guess the question I've got, and it will impact waste check, because what's being brought in to the waste park, to the landfill, to the waste park, right, the diversion credits will be lower for what they get for diversion credits from the province. Estimated that Gus, I was talking to Gus, $130,000 roughly, could be 120, but not positive. Maybe they're high, This was a number thrown at us when we had a meeting in DP here last week, but this week. Anyhow, that amount, that would only come into effect because we'll have to support the shortfall. It may not be that high, maybe 50,000, but, that doesn't number to us. That would only affect our budget as we support waste check, our share. That would be next year's budget, it would not be in this fiscal.
Yeah, I believe that's correct, because they do the statistics, I think they're a year behind in the stats, but I'm not 100% sure about that. 130 sounds really high, because I don't think we have, I'm trying to look at what the waste check financials say for what the total diversion credits are.
Right.
And it seems to me that the total diversion credits, best of my recollection, was around 200 and something thousand. So if that's true, then it would mean that it would cut our diversion in half, and that seems really high. Now, look, that's not my area.
No, of course.
So I don't know for sure. Well, so the 2017 and 18 budget for diversion credits, the total amount is 146,000. So there might be some misunderstanding or miscommunication.
Maybe I misunderstood.
So maybe he understood the question, how many credits do we have? And what we're seeing here is that the budget is saying the total credits are 146,000. So there's absolutely no way that it would be that much. Even if it was 20%, which I think would be high, but if, let's say that is the case, that's 28,000.
I'm glad that's why I asked. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just a question for clarification to Guy. Wednesday's meeting, will Mr. Gus Green be at that meeting?
Yes, he will.
So he'll explain this to us in detail.
Very good.
And we'll bring it back the next week on the 13th or 14th
Yes.
and clarify, I guess.
Yeah, and in fairness to the partners, there's 3 other partners in waste checking. Right? So in fairness to the partners, if we are directly responsible for that, it might be a conversation. I can't believe I'm saying this, but it might be a conversation to be had at the waste park budget deliberation, is to say, well, in the interest of partnership and we didn't, if we're causing a problem that's hurting our partners, we should be honest about that and take a look at what it is.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't necessarily have to come from all 6 units. It could come from the operations of the waste park, which would kind of make sense. So there is the possibility of looking into that, but obviously that's a decision of another board at another time.
But still, it makes a lot of sense what you just said there. That's very fair.
Okay. No more questions? We don't need to accept this, do we?
We should.
We should, yes. So we need,
So moved to accept the financial report.
Seconded.
all in favor?
Aye.
Minded, carried. Number 6 was strategic priority topics. There is no topic to discuss here. This is just, it's there because of our new format of the our agenda. Number 7 is for decision. 7A, Department of Public Works fleet expansion. And our Director of Public Works is here, I think, to explain.
Thank you for having me. This item is, we're looking into purchasing 2 half-ton trucks. One is to replace the current quarter-ton truck, the Ford Ranger. I think we're operating this truck for almost over 9 years now. It's come to the end of its lifetime. Its cost for fixing it up and fuel usage is getting higher and higher. So we're hoping to replace that truck with a half-ton truck, double crew cab. Because also we noticed there's some limited usage of certain people can't drive the Ranger, it's too small, there's not enough capacity for winter gear or rain gear or cleaning sewers. There's always some, similar to fishing rain gear or something that needs to be stored inside the crew cab, so the Ranger is getting really small and staff is not complaining about it, but it has some concerns. So we're requesting to upgrade this type of vehicle to a double crew cab so we can also use it for field maintenance and send out crews with 2 or more people in one vehicle. Before we had to use 2 vehicles, so it makes life a little easier and I think to work for staff a bit safer. Second vehicles that we're requesting is a half-ton truck for the operator at the West Pubnico sewer treatment plant. It would be just a single crew cab, half-ton truck capable of pulling a trailer for maintenance equipment for the pump stations and lift stations, and to do all those regular maintenance checks at the East Pubnico water utilities, meter readings, and just to cut down on also mileage cost. That's the operators, because currently the operator is using his own truck, so he's charging the mileage to us, and the amount is fairly high, so we're hoping to cut down some costs and increase maintenance schedules, so we could send him out more often to do checkups, and which could increase the longevity of our equipment on the East Pubnico water utilities and the West Pubnico sewer system. So these are 2 items that we would like to request.
I think that,
Yeah, okay.
I think that we, it's crucial to have that equipment in place, for the workers to do their job adequately and safely, and without the expense of, like you're saying, with the Ford, the Ranger is very small. It's hard to get into, like, even a small guy like me, so,
Too small.
and, so I move the motion that our CAO or our clerk, gets, prices from Ford, GM, Dodge, whatever, wherever is the best price, and bring it back to council, and we'll go from there.
I'll second it. We've seen just the quick crunch down of the numbers, and it seemed to just make sense.
Yeah, it does.
Now, is that the motion for both?
Yes. Yes.
To replace and then buy a new one?
You need 2 motions.
We need 2 motions, I guess we don't need 2 motions.
As long as the motion
Covers both.
covers both.
Yeah, we covered both.
And that's what I
Yes.
wanted to make sure. Any questions? Yes?
This is Hans, the Ranger, will that be sold?
Yeah,
Use it
we-
against this purchase, or,
Yeah, we're anticipating of trading it in and using it towards the purchase.
doing a trading?
Yes.
Right on.
And
Thank you.
use whatever the worth of that current vehicle and use it towards the purchase of the double crew cab.
Thank you.
Okay, so any other questions? So the motion is to not purchase at this point, but to get prices?
Yes.
And does that mean that he has to
And the
wait?
best price,
And the best price, and
That would be
then,
the
and then purchase,
our CEO or our clerk will
can decide
can decide what will go from there.
based on the price.
Yes.
We prepared a request for quotes documents outlining specifications for each vehicle, so we're ready to post that for
Okay.
approval.
Okay.
Okay. So we've all heard the motion, ready for the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Contrary-minded? Carried.
Thank you.
B, summer recreation staff budget. It's basically the same, apparently, as what we had before, except maybe a slight increase in the budget amount. Open it up here.
Traditionally, what, as evidenced by the $18,000 positive variance in the recreation department, Jeanette's budgeting is conservative. And so in 2017, for instance, she had asked and received approval for $74,985, and she actually spent $68,318. This year, she's asking for $76,778. It is for the same amount of students. The minimum wage has gone up, which is why the amount has gone up. And the reason why we ask for this is, at this time, is because she goes out to advertise, and she would not want to do that without council's approval of the amount.
So moved, we've been doing this for years and years. She can't wait for our budget to be finalized, it's too late.
Okay, question call for? No, I thought maybe you had a
Just a
question.
scratch, just a scratch.
Okay, it's a scratch. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary-minded? Carried. Oh, yeah, okay. The low tax rebate policy amendment. Want to pass that on, that you can explain?
Sure.
I don't think I can.
I'll start with the motion, how's that? I'll start with the suggestion and then I'll work backwards. So, we are suggesting changes to our tax exemption policy based on some discussion that we had, well, some email discussion that we had with council, and then you can certainly debate it now. So the existing is that we give $200 to any family or individual who owns a home that makes between 0 and 17,100. Okay, that number, 17,100, represents or represented the amount of money that a senior would make alone on supplement. So obviously a couple, that's obviously going to be double that number, or could be up to double that number, or more. So and then the second line item is the 150 exemption for family income of 17,101 to 22,560. So that's basically saying anybody who makes more than 17,100 and is full-time minimum wage would obtain the 150, or would qualify for the 150 exemption. So that's what it was before. So first of all, minimum wage changes, so there are some adjustments to make, as well as the allowances, etc. And the other discussion was, council wished us to take a look at whether or not we could expand the exemption to include more people, and in particular, seniors was mentioned. And so what I will say, and for the benefit of council, of course, you've probably heard this, you've seen the report, but for the purposes of those watching, is that those seniors that are on supplement already receive a rebate through the provincial government. So that rebate is quite a bit more than our own, and so it can be up to $800 for seniors and only one of them has to have the supplement in that home to qualify. So if one of them gets the supplement, then they would receive 50% rebate on their property taxes up to $800. So how it works if they get our rebate as well is that, let's say the tax bill is $700 and they qualify for our $200 exemption, that gets applied directly to their tax bill. So then that leaves them with $500, and then they would apply to the provincial government for 50% of $500. So So we are in fact, so what happens in effect is whatever we give, half of it is reduced because the province is giving 50% less.
I thought it was on the maximum amount, no?
No,
No,
it's if
that's-
there are other rebates that apply. So a $200 rebate from us and also receiving the provincial rebate means that we are saving the province $100, right? So and the impact of that rebate isn't as much as we would hope. So the other concern that we have is like if we're starting to include all seniors with double income with supplement, is that number would change our rebate considerably. And so it would have to change the way that you did taxes. So if you did that, and if you were agreeing to do that, then I'd have to come back to you and say, I'm not sure what that looks like, and it probably means an increase in tax rate. And so I didn't think that was the intention either. So it was like it went a little too far. So we tried to haul it back a little bit, and what we said was, well, if you're making 22,600 between that number and 26,000, then you would be entitled to a $100 exemption. Where did the 26 come from? Basically, just took a look at, where the supplement, the double income supplement would be, which is about 32, and just backed off a little from there. So it was, there's no magic to the 26,000. Okay, so I would, at the very least, recommend that we change the first two lines because those have been increased for the indexing of allowances and the changes in your minimum wage. And then after that, you can choose whether or not you want to add the third layer. Does that make sense?
And if I may, and the third layer doesn't affect our budget by that much then? Or you don't anticipate it to affect our budget by that much?
No, I anticipate that the amount could be about $4,000.
Yes.
So
Insignificant as far as.
it's we used to spend, or last year we spent 17,500.
Yes.
So that it would put us over 20 grand.
Yes.
If I may.
Yes.
See, my thoughts are for the cost implication to the municipality, like $4,000 for the difference. It's quite minimal on the broader spectrum of what we spend in a year versus what it could possibly help someone who, clearly, I mean, it has to. You could only apply if you really needed the help. I like it.
Same here.
Yeah.
Same here.
Okay.
I'd like to make the motion that council make official notice of change to the tax abstention policy to include the following change, which is, as we see there, and the policy amendment be brought to February regular council meeting for approval. Or, we could approve it now and then, or?
Because it's a change in policy, we can't approve it instantly. What we can do is say, okay, these are the intentions, this is the notice to change. So in 7 days, we'll then be able to pass it. It will absolutely apply to next year, no question.
Made that motion.
Motion, and it's seconded. Any other questions? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary-minded? Carried. Item 7D, dewatering solution, West Pubnico wastewater, and you're on again.
Very good. This is a request for decision based on the dewatering solution that we had started in April 2017 with a report by EXP Services. It was a engineering consulting company, specialty in wastewater solutions, and they had looked at the current geotube bag use versus a centrifuge system. And I think in the wastewater committee meeting, we had decided to go with the centrifuge system. So based on these information decisions, we put out an RFP to hire an engineer to help us with the design and installation of a centrifuge system at the West Pubnico sewer treatment plant. During that process, we got approached by a supplier and manufacturer of a mobile dewatering solution, which is essentially a dewatering truck. So that's a pumper truck repurposed with a centrifuge mounted on the truck that dewaters. I think we have a quick video that explains it a little bit better, but it dewaters the sludge and returns the water into the treatment plants, and we have the same dryness of the same function of the centrifuge and the same quality of sludge dryness. So the purpose or the advantages, I think I had listed them in the RFD, and I think it's 2 pages long. So it's a multifunctional tool that is able to drive on Nova Scotia roads, so we can serve more than just one community with the system. We can dewater and service and clean our lift stations in West Pubnico. In Tusket, we can clean all tanks with it. We can pump out tanks with that, and we can start dewatering and servicing our equipment or on-site sewers at Wedgeport. And we also can pump water out of the East Pubnico water system, because some of these wells that we maintain sometimes are full of water. If we have to do any maintenance work, we have to pump them out to do it safely. So this truck would cover all of it, and has, like, it's, in my opinion, a very useful tool. But enjoy the video.
After more than 60 years of manufacturing excellence and innovation, APCO's high-skilled workforce is producing a mobile dewatering system based on proven technology that dramatically reduces mileage costs, pumping costs, disposal fees, and fuel costs. The result is a completely self-sufficient mobile dewatering system. The result is a best quality North American source components of your choice of truck chassis that can reduce costs more than 80% and reduce pumping costs per tank by more than 50%.
These numbers are compared to regular vacuum truck, like pumping truck. So
whether you're a private contractor or a municipality operating on tight budgets, these are the kinds of savings and efficiencies that we just can't afford to ignore. The APCO MDT system works equally well in municipal wastewater treatment plants, residential septic systems, and everything in between. But how does this technology work? The secret is that instead of removing and transporting the entire contents of the tank, the MDT system quickly separates the liquid from the solids and returns the liquid to the tank for normal on-site treatment. This typically results in a reduction of total volume of material to be removed of between 75 and 85%. That means you can do 5 times more jobs than a conventional pumper of similar capacity before needing to discharge. The solids are stored in the truck and then simply disposed of at a composting facility. Greenhouse gas production is reduced, and you don't have to burn fuel hauling water. In a recent study, an APCO MDT truck hauled just over 39 tons of solids, while a conventional pumper truck hauled over 500 tons of mixed solids and liquids from the same number of tanks. The APCO MDT system can also be used for all vacuuming and jetting operations on pipes of all kinds. The versatility of the mobile dewatering system means that the same truck can replace costly fixed dewatering systems in municipal facilities and service domestic and commercial tanks with ease. There's really no downtime. Let's take a look at the dewatering system in action. After arriving on site, the suction hose is deployed from its powered reel to the source and connected to the vacuum side of the system. As the contents, liquids and solids combined, are pumped into the MDT system's holding tank, a flocculant is mixed in at precise concentrations to make the suspended solids clump together in the water. This process, like every other step, is computer controlled from a waterproof touchscreen panel. Whirlpool action keeps the solids suspended until the mixture is pumped onto the screen trough, where a series of paddles moves it back and forth, gradually forcing out the water. The remaining solids are then pumped into a large onboard holding tank. The water, along with its useful cargo of bacteria, is then pumped back into the treatment system or septic tank, where it is either processed further or dispersed through the disposal field. A continuous discharge gravity water return can also be built into the system, reducing pump use and maintenance costs. APCO's experience building cutting-edge aluminum boats and factory food processing equipment shows that they know just how to make the most of every square centimeter of space and to develop and build systems and components that can stand up to the harshest environments, the hardest use, and still be operator and budget friendly. All construction is of the highest standard, using the best available materials and components. We use all stainless steel for strength and a long rust-free working life. APCO's commitment to quality is your assurance. Using the MPT technology, it's possible to service many domestic customers before needing to empty solids from the...
Yeah, so I think that explains roughly what this truck can do. I think we check the capacity. It definitely can run the capacity of our sewer plant. Our operator can empty our sludge holding tank within 4 to 6 hours, and that every 10 days, 12 days. So there's no reduction in capacity or any danger to that. On top of that, we can service all the Tuskets, all 110 tanks that we have to maintain and clean. The system doesn't have any trouble with grease. Currently we have quite a few issues with restaurants not cleaning their grease traps enough, so that grease ends up in the sewer plant and plugs filters and pumps, and so this truck can just work it into the drying process and can be disposed at the landfill. So that's it's easy for us to deal with that problem. We also currently don't have a backup or emergency system for West Pubnico in place, so if there's any power outages, none of our lift stations are working. So, and in my opinion, it is that most residents in West Pubnico have emergency backup systems and continue putting their waste into the system, but we have no way to move that. So with this truck, we have a backup system, an emergency system. We can maintain these levels and avoid any overflows or environmental disasters. So that's one another points, and yeah, so we're hoping to change direction, cancel the current RFP for the centrifuge, and purchase this mobile version and reduce operational costs. I think the capital costs are only half as, I think it outlined on the back on the last page. I think capital costs are lower than the centrifuge system, so it's less to purchase, and it's quite a bit less to operate on an annual budget. So I see a lot of savings by increasing our services all over the municipality. And we cover a lot of problems that we currently have, so
I've seen as well it could be used to service the new systems in Westport.
exactly, we can pump out dewater on site, return the water into the tanks, so we don't remove the bacteria out of these on-site sewers. In some cases, these bacteria are useful, so if we return them, it increases the capacity and the performance of the on-site sewer systems and prolongs the life expectancy of these systems. So with this system, we can serve it all ourselves and cut out a lot of contractor services. So it saves us a lot of money, and we can do a better job.
Yes? Gordon?
Is there potential here to contract it to other units that
Yes.
may require
Another
the service?
potential advantage that we could open a revenue stream. We could rent out the truck to partnering municipalities and help them with their sewer systems. Just want to make sure we're not interfering with any private competition or private operations.
You better watch that.
Yes,
I'm not kidding
so
you, you
this is
better
more
watch that.
of our own use, and even the supplier, APCO, is also talking about potentially using our truck for further marketing and showcasing, like demo shows. So we might even talk about getting paid that they're using our truck in southern Nova Scotia to showcase the technology to other municipalities. So there's another revenue stream, and
When I mentioned that, Councillor Surratt, I meant other municipal units. I didn't mean going to pump out people's sewer systems.
But even if they're, but what I'm thinking, we've got two companies that do this in our municipality. And if we go into the municipality
Yeah, but
and start pumping other places and they're going there, watch out for conflict.
No, but they don't have the service that this truck provides, is what that's what I'm asking.
yeah, we
There's
potentially put
two
other
different-
municipal owns.
Forgive me if I'm
system.
wrong, but aren't we talking about two totally different things?
We
The service we would be providing is nothing like private companies are doing now, is it?
it could be used for that purpose. We have no intentions of using it for
That's
that
exactly what
purpose.
I'm trying to be clear on.
So we have no intentions of using it on private septic tanks. Those that are owned by us, we would consider using it to do our maintenance of our own. The dewatering component is not offered by the private
And that's what I was
companies.
referring to,
Correct.
collecting the solids
Yeah.
and dewatering back in. I mean, I didn't even connect the two services as being the same service.
This truck is multi-use, but clearly the main reason why we are looking at this is the dewatering component, so, you know,
Okay, is there potential to do dewatering at other municipalities in the region?
yes,
Okay, that answers it.
Because they can't dewater.
yes, yes. And, I mean, I'm not sure what that demand is, certainly when we were looking at this, we reached out to the CAOs and said, you know, is there a need for this, and some expressed some interest, but, you know, it depends on how they're dewatering now and whether that's working well for them or not. And, you know, they might have an old, you know, centrifuge or something that will require replacement. They may make a different decision when that comes end of life. They may say, you know what, like, we're gonna use your service, and then when it's time to buy another one, let's say, because we'll have a dewatering truck that's end of life, then that might be a regional decision, right? So, just to remind council that we had $350,000 placed in the capital reserve for the centrifuge replacement. And if you recall, that was not the entire cost of the project. What we thought was that would be enough to buy the centrifuge and do some installation, but it wouldn't be the complete project cost. Hans's work confirms that
yes,
to
we
be
had,
true.
I think we had, for this year, we had $350,000 for engineering work and purchase, and we had an additional $350 for next year's budget for installation, to hire a contractor and get it installed and operational, and for training. So it was a total sum of $700,000 that we had allocated for this project. The current offer by APCO, which is a used model, was built for a private company which dissolved in the moment they had the truck available. So it's a 2-year-old truck with 12,000 kilometers on the clock, and has only used it for demonstrations, so it hasn't seen full usage yet. So it's pretty much a new truck for $120,000 less than the new price. So we can handle this purchase with only one portion of our initial budget that we had allocated for this project. And delivery time could be pretty much immediately. Compared to the centrifuge, there would be a 19 to 22 week delivery time, which puts us in September. So our initial goal to solve the smell issue in West Pubnico before the summer in 2018 wouldn't be possible with the centrifuge. with this truck, we could start by April pumping out and pretty much cut it out immediately.
Okay, one more.
Yes.
Oh, Guy had his stand up.
No, no, you first.
Will we be able to run this truck with current staff? Or are we looking at more staff?
No, we should be able to run it with current staff. All we have to do is upgrade our driver license to class 1. So there's no other special training needed, except this current offer includes a 2-day training by staff. So our staff will be fully trained on the truck, so they know every controls. There's an option to run it manually or fully automated just by pushing a button and the truck does it all. So if that ever fails, we still have the manual option to run the pumps manually with levers, and so it's a foolproof system and has the same environmental qualities like the centrifuge, so we don't have any drawbacks on that we don't meet discharge of solids anymore. So this system is approved and follows these guidelines.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilor
Couple of things, 2 things. Number one would be, if you happen to go outside our municipality, I bet you'll need licenses and trained people, licensed people to go. And this is just a guess I'm making. But I bet you anything, if you're starting to go pumping somewhere else, you'll find that you have to have some kind of a license or insurance and insurance liabilities and that you would be putting on yourselves.
Why would it be different than our municipality?
What's that?
Why
But
would-
if you're only sticking your, if you're only stuck in your, no, they were talking about maybe going somewhere else.
Why would it be different in the municipality of Yarmouth than here?
I don't know, I'm just saying, would you have, if you're going somewhere else, you would be more liable, I think, than our own municipality. If you went somewhere else to do work, or if you worked on your own house, or you got a contractor to come in, it's a different story.
It's a question, yeah.
Yeah, we definitely have to look into insurance.
If you were doing that, if you stuck to your own municipality, I wouldn't be surprised where it's your own work, you're not working to be sued.
I think initially this was just the idea to keep it in use in our own municipality. If other municipalities are interested in these services and we find a way to rent it out, probably these costs that we need for additional licensing or additional insurance, we probably could talk about agreements or to recover these costs during rental costs and.
Question 2 is gas tax. Can we use gas tax?
Yes.
Okay, that was a question I know we were using for the centrifugal. Very good,
It's eligible as well.
that's what I had. Yeah, thank you.
Good question. Councilor Gomez.
Okay, I read over this a few times, and I, you know, since it was, the centrifugal was for the West Pubnico sewer, of course, I'm very concerned because that's probably been my biggest pet peeve problem I've had in 17 years, is the smell at the sewer plant. My question is, you know, and I think it's great that we can get a truck, that we can, you know, do all kinds of things, but as the chairman of the West Pubnico Sewer Committee, I want to be sure that if we get this truck, that how are we going to prioritize, like, you know, we're going to have a schedule at the West Pubnico sewer plant for so many days, and then it's pickup and dewatering, because I guess you know, if it's time at the West Pubnico sewer and it's busy doing something somewhere else, you know.
Yeah, I can
You know,
address that.
I guess I'm almost looking for priority at the West Pubnico treatment plant.
I can attempt to answer, I'm sure Hans might have something to add. The bottom line is 90% of the use at all times will be West Pubnico. Clearly, like through the volume, right? So when we're talking about using it for a Tusket or a Wedgeport, the use in those areas can be scheduled, right? So you can do all of the work that you need to do in Pubnico, and then when that's done, you can schedule the work. There's never a lot of urgency around. Well, I mean, there might be,
Yeah.
but the urgency might be one tank, right? It's not going to be 41 tanks, right? So the urgency is always going to be West Pubnico because it's constantly receiving water. So there actually isn't a way other than to prioritize West Pubnico's needs because of the just the way that it works, because everything else isn't a conventional system,
Yeah.
right? All the other stuff, like Tusket, for instance, we're not dewatering, in fact. We're emptying a septic tank. So, same thing with Wedgeport. So the mere fact that the only actual dewatering that we will be doing is on the West Pubnico sewer, it commands it to be priority one for West Pubnico. So I understand your concern, but it's actually not possible for it to be anything other than for that.
I guess we've been talking about priority base, in our area. And I want to make sure that the priority base for this truck is West Pubnico Sewer.
Yeah.
Well, if the EMC base is big enough, maybe we could park the dewatering in that location.
Maybe we could go to the head office in Halifax or wherever it is.
So I don't know, did you have anything to add to
Yeah, that
that?
was the preliminary idea, having the truck located in West Pubnico. I think in the capital costs, my estimates, I had put $60,000 towards extending the sewer plant, just the building, because we have to store it inside over the winter. Because there are valves involved in hydraulics that are sensitive, similar to a fire truck, so a heated, or like at least an indoor space would be necessary, so we probably would build a little sheds or a garage as an extension as a sewer plant. But it's optional. If we find a cheaper storage somewhere close by the fire station, or then we can save these costs, and we only have $370,000.
Might be a money stream or a financial stream for the fire department, if they have room in there. I don't even know if they have room in there or something.
Priority was, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
One more question, now I don't know nothing about dewatering and sewer. So how often will this truck be used in West Pubnico? Is it something that's used daily, or weekly, or every
10
few
days, isn't it?
Currently, we're dewatering every 10 to 12 days, about half of the maximum of this sludge holding tank. The maximum capacity is about 58,000 gallons of that tank, so we're dewatering 25 to 26,000, and then we have a capacity to fill up for over 10 days until we have to dewater again. So that would be every 2 weeks, every 2 business weeks, like good schedule every Friday. That one is dewatering. It takes about 6 hours to lower the level enough for another 10 days. So during heavy rain events, we can even use it for 2 days, dewater for 2 days, and we're still within maximum capacity and never run in danger that it overflows so that we can't keep up. So it runs just about 1,000 gallons under our current capacity. So the maximum capacity was outlined here for about 3,000 gallons an hour that the truck can process. One currently is, if you do dewaters, you use it usually about 4,000 gallons an hour. So we're really, really close in that range. So it will be same operation, maybe an hour longer, which is within our business hours and work hours, so.
Question.
We haven't had
We
we
haven't
don't
had
have a
a
motion yet.
Oh.
I make a motion,
I'll second it.
recommend cancellation, the first motion, I guess, recommend the cancellation of the Centerfield tender in favor of the mobile option as analyzed by Public Works above.
So we
Or
don't need a
and
motion
authorize
for that.
CMU to retender the dewatering project in favor of mobile dewatering option, and that the original tender be canceled, both be arranged as soon as possible. Is that what you want?
Yeah.
That would be the recommended, yeah.
That's the motion.
On the motion, I just want to make sure, like, we have showcased a local fabricator. This will actually go out to public tender. We're not just sole sourcing this.
Yeah.
There may not be another company, but we don't know that for sure. This will be done using the provincial procurement site, just so that you're aware.
Clarification on that, if I may.
Yes.
Where you're buying secondhand, does it have to?
Yes. It's the amount.
Amount of money.
Yeah, anything above, I believe in that instance, it's capital, I believe it's 50,000. I think in our procurement policy, we actually say 25,000, but the actual act is higher.
Question?
Okay. The question's been called for.
All
In favor?
Aye.
Contraminded? Carried.
What to thank Hans for his work on this because essentially, you know, we asked engineers to come in and give us a recommendation. They did a really good job at giving us a recommendation. And when we went out and did the pricing, this opportunity came up and Hans did some very good work to do some comparisons. These recommendations were not just done internally, they were vetted by engineers outside of the organization just to make sure that we had some experience, and we've also gone to customers to understand, you know, how it's working for them, and everything was very, very positive. So I just wanted to thank Hans for being here and for the work he's done.
Great.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, for sure.
Yeah.
And since you were here for the beginning, you have to stay till the end.
Right, well then. I'm not gonna prolong that then.
It's a joke.
Okay, so, oh, there we are. The next one
You can leave.
is Tusket Crosswalk. Yeah, Tusket Crosswalk petition. There was a petition that was brought in here requesting a crosswalk at Carl's store.
Just on their website.
There's a lady that called me last fall sometimes from Tusket area, wondering how, or, you know, if they could get a crosswalk, and I explained to her what the process was, which is going through a study with the Department of Transportation. They have to do a study and they have to decide whether or not it's feasible to put one there. As you can see, if you read this, in, where are we, 2001, a request was made for a feasibility study to the department, and no official response has ever been found. Was never, not that we're aware of, not had been found. 2016, the same topic came up again. Transportation was, again, asked to reassess. No official response or assessment was received. And at this point, I guess, we have a petition, and we're going to try it again. Whether or not that would qualify or they would approve one there, I'm not sure, because that's a dangerous intersection. So perhaps what we should do, if we do send another letter asking them to do the feasibility there, that maybe we could ask as well, just to indicate how dangerous that intersection is as well. Not just for pedestrians, that's a dangerous intersection. When you come at that Y intersection, it's very difficult. So just maybe to even look to see if there's any way that they can make that intersection safer as well. And that maybe could be added to the letter, if we do send a letter for, to ask them to do the feasibility. That if they can't put a sidewalk, at least try to look at the safety issue of it.
They're not very swift in answering, are they?
No, well, it's only 7 years.
What do you check?
So anyway, no, and they haven't, and I don't know if it's because, if it came directly from here or if it came direct, you know, I mean, the feasibility is not done here locally. It has to go through, we used to have used to be a person in Bridgewater that would have to do traffic surveys and whatever, so I don't know why we didn't get the response. I'm not saying that it's because of local or if it's because of, yeah, so, anyway,
Let me move that for you.
yeah, I can't move it.
I'll move that council request the Department of Transportation and Infrastructural Renewal to investigate the installation of the sidewalk on Highway 308 between Argyle Courthouse and Carl's Store.
Seconded.
Comment here,
Yes?
I guess this directed to our CAO. Did we receive from Inshore, from Sean Dosimo, an application of any kind for a crosswalk at Dennett's Point?
We haven't received a response yet. The only thing that we got back was that they were doing the assessment.
Okay,
That was in
all right,
September.
because I guess I haven't heard anything, I hadn't heard, so, but I know he had talked to me about it, and,
We did ask for an update
okay,
last week.
okay, good, okay, perfect.
Question called for? All in favor?
Aye.
Contraminded? Carried. We added board member for the airport. There's a need for another board member from the public, and I do believe we have a name. We do have a name that's been forwarded, but it has to be approved by all three units, or at least, maybe not all three, as long as the majority of the board or the units to accept this
So is this a
individual.
board member
For the airport.
Represent our
Representative.
municipality?
No, not necessarily our municipality.
It's not how it works.
Community, right?
They would be a business board,
There-
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
board member.
yes.
The current structure is elected officials and some
Yeah.
community
So it
representatives.
doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter where they're from.
Okay.
I get you.
We're looking
No.
for skill set as opposed to.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
Mm.
exactly. So you have a name to recommend?
Yep. The unit, the approval from the airport was that Mr. Lloyd McDougall, who's currently the Katy First Nation manager, be selected as the business-led board member. He would be replacing, well, I shouldn't say he'd be replacing, because we changed the structure.
Yes.
We had lost two business
Yes.
people, and we replaced those two with one seat, so he would be filling that seat.
Right, okay, exactly.
So moved.
Second.
So it's moved and seconded that Lloyd McDougall be appointed to the,
That we accept.
that we accept.
We accept the
Yeah,
recommendation
We accept the recommendation. that-
from the board.
Okay, yeah.
Lloyd McDougall be the board member.
Okay.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Contraminded? Carried. Other business. Now, these don't necessarily, they don't need, it's not for decision, but it can, depending on. So the first one, which is 8A, is contribution to Jeux de l'Acadie Foundation fundraising campaign. Let's see here. So it's open for discussion.
Yeah, it's $5,200 a year for 5 years.
We have to go collect bottles for that.
So
Yeah.
have they asked us in the past, I know when it was here, of course, but when it's in New Brunswick or wherever, is this a common thing? Chris, you would know.
I can provide some background
Please,
if you,
yeah.
if you would like.
Yeah.
The foundation, the Jeux d'Acadie Foundation supports all regions of the Jeux d'Acadie, so including Nova Scotia. They have done 2 fundraising campaigns in the history of the foundation, so in the 40-year history of the Jeux d'Acadie. The first one was about 15 years ago, and it was $1 million, which they attained. And the second one is this year. So it's just a kind of a one-time request. The goal of the foundation is to make the Jeux d'Acadie self-sufficient, so not require any government funds to support the work of the Jeux d'Acadie. That's the overall goal. So this campaign is geared to get to that. So their goal is another $1 million, and they have been working in the past year asking a lot of businesses, municipal units from all of the Atlantic provinces to support the foundation and the campaign. And they were at the point of requesting from all of the municipal units in Nova Scotia who have regions that are involved in the Jeux d'Acadie. So there are 11 in the province of Nova Scotia, so we're one of them. So they decided to forward the request to all of them. So this would go to that campaign, which stays in the Jeux d'Acadie, which are used to support the regions throughout the years ahead and hopefully long time.
Is it, just a question of clarity, did we received, when we were hosted of the Jeux, we received revenues from this foundation?
Correct, so they provide funds every year to all the regions, including the host committee, and their suggestion or their desire is for surpluses of host committees to be invested in the foundation for years to come, so it just keeps building up throughout the years.
Councilor Murphy.
So the asking is 1,000?
Yes, so they've requested $1,000 from all the municipal units in the province. Some have already said no, some have said yes. I know Claire is looking at this, since they're really close, I'm bringing them up. And I spoke to, just because I'm involved with the Jeux d'Acadie, they kind of brought the request through me. So I forwarded it to Claire, just because they didn't have a contact, and they said that they were going to consider it tomorrow night at their meeting, and they were willing even to combine support for the campaign if you chose to. But that's their request, $1,000, and it can be divided over 5 years.
Move that we approve.
$1,000 over 5 years?
Yes, or that's that was their
You know,
request.
I was involved with the Jeux d'Acadie when they were here the last time. I was a volunteer I was at Meadowfields. And, you know, I had a great time. I had fun. The kids were so nice, and the parents were great. I enjoyed it, and so I would like to make that motion for Argyle to sponsor this $1,000 for the Jeux d'Acadie.
Second.
Oh,
Whatever.
So $1,000 one time, right? Not 200.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Not worth the paperwork, it's spread over.
Yeah,
5 years.
$1,000 one time.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah,
Wish that in the current, out of the current year.
yes, please.
It's been seconded. No, you had your hand up. Did you have something?
it was answered.
Oh, okay, okay. So any more questions or discussions? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary-minded? Carried.
Thanks for your explanation, Chris.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Crystal clear. Thank you.
Crystal
Yes.
clear,
Crispy.
Christophe
yeah. Here's your nickname.
So vive de soi.
Illegal garbage dumping and burning. Calvin, you had brought that up. It's, do you want to?
It's still going on in my beautiful community of West Pubnico, Lower West. It's still going on. Last week there was a four-wheel drive truck apparently where they used to dump and burn, we put rocks and, you know, so they can't go there, but of course they find other places, and so it's still going on, and we're just, the concerned citizens were, you know, for plain words, pissed off about the whole situation, especially this guy who's, you know, been a kind of a champion in our community, Brad Domtex, when it comes to garbage. He hates garbage, and, you know, he was part of the windmill gang and put up signs, you know, please don't litter and all this stuff, and so it happened to be, I think, on his land, abuts the ocean. So he was, you know, pretty upset about that. So he was just wondering if there was anything we could do as far as education. And I know that we do, you know, in our newsletter, we do show people that, you know, you can dump this here and here and here. You know, all the materials that were being burnt could have been disposed of, you know, either at the landfill or curbside or whatever, right? So just, I guess if there's any way we could educate people, and also if we could put a little bit more bite in our enforcement, you know, I don't know if that's possible or not, but just a thought.
Yes.
Have you gone to waste check, because
Oh,
we
yeah.
have the bylaw enforcement officer,
Yep.
who give tickets and everything there?
Well, Brad has Richie on speed dial, so I have to worry about that, but, you know. In this case, of course, the garbage was looked through and tried to find numbers or clues or anything, but I think maybe they found out who it was, but I'm not sure, so I wasn't privy to that information. But if there's any way that we can educate people and, you know, just get them to stop to do this, because it's, you know, pretty disheartening when you're trying to keep things clean and, you know, people turn around and start burning God knows what, you know, try to.
You could have waste check make a presentation, you know, that they've got that education part of it.
Yeah.
Waste check. Go in, if you kind of know who the people are, they could stop in and have a good talk.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
We pay for that service.
yes. So, any more discussion, and where do we go with this? I guess my question is, I mean, I know you've got a concern, but if we just talk about it like this and then we don't do anything, we haven't resolved anything. So what's our next step, like what you suggested, or, you know, or whatever, so.
Yeah, the issue is we do have enforcement, we do have penalties, but of course, you know, in order to dole out penalties, you need proof.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that we could do is ask Waste Check. At times, Waste Check has put out some surveillance cameras.
Yeah.
So it might not be a bad idea if there's consistent burning in an area to put that out. Usually we put signage that says that it's happening, so that in and of itself usually discourages people from going. We could certainly ask Waste Check to step it up a notch to try to catch what's happening.
Right.
And if that's something that you think might help, Councillor?
Yeah, I think it would help, but again, public education would probably be the best thing, because, you know, for some reason, you know, I guess 2018 people should know better, but they still do it.
Yes,
You know?
and most of the time, the people that do this do know. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's not because they don't, it's not because they don't realize that they shouldn't be doing it.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, just for being on YouTube camera, I mean, word's gonna get around.
Yeah.
yes, yes, for sure.
It's sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's something I see a lot in Westport. Actually, we have several dirt roads in Westport, and it's quite clear it's an older mentality. I think, like, you don't see the younger people go. Maybe I'm wrong. Like, I'll say this tonight and watch tomorrow. Will see a young person go there dumping, but it seems to be like sort of that's how things were done years ago. You know, illegal dumping wasn't so illegal back then, and I have a major problem with it in my area, and I'm calling Richie all the time. I think harsher penalties. That's how I would go. Education is education, but you know how hard-headed people can be, especially with stuff like that.
You have to catch them.
Yeah, that's the issue, right? It's tough, but signage helps. We did add signage in Westport. There was a few cameras put. They're still put off and on. Sometimes they're taken out. Sometimes they're put back. I don't talk publicly too much because you don't want people to know if they're there or not. But it's in our trail area, right? And our trail passes through places where dumping actually used to be a legitimate dump some 60 years ago or whatnot, and people are still dumping there. So it helps. Signage does help quite a bit. It did for us,
Yes.
very much.
Councilor Murphy, you had something?
Yeah, I like Councilor Malone saying that, you know, I've had a lot of issues and the municipality's been really great at picking this stuff up, and I've had garbage like in the Plymouth area in one of the side roads that cuts across into Melbourne and yeah, Hardwood Hills. And there's garbage there that come from, and people have, I had a guy that, you know, Gerald Scott, he's gone and looked at this stuff, and it was disgusting. And he's opened bags and found names from like Wellington, Hebron. So like they're coming from that way, they're going past the dump, and they're bringing it down to Plymouth to dump it in those roads. Like I just don't get it, like it's just, I don't get it. But anyways, it's, you know, and I think we're always gonna have that problem.
It's hard to get rid of
It's
it.
never gonna stop.
It's definitely hard to get rid of it, but,
Anyways, that's,
You gotta keep at it.
so,
So we want harsher penalties, so we have to make a motion. We have a policy of some kind here in the municipality. I don't know exactly how it reads, but
Yeah, it's the solid waste bylaw. And in fact, Waste Check is currently recommending changes to it
including stiffer penalties.
as we speak. I haven't seen all of it. I didn't see changes in penalties at this time, but we can go back and, I mean, it's ultimately, we can set our own penalties as long as they understand what they are.
Yeah.
So if we want to set stiffer penalties for our guy, we have every right to do that. But we obviously use their bylaw officer to execute
That's
the
right.
penalties.
If their bylaw is what we're looking for, then we wouldn't have to make one ourselves, right? We could just use theirs. Is that correct, or?
Each organization has its own bylaw, but what happens is Waste Check usually, because they're a subject matter expert, they're the ones that would recommend changes from time to time. what you decide to do with that as individual municipalities up to you. They don't have the right to actually do the bylaw themselves. That would be our powers to do.
So in notice to motion, I can maybe table something for next time that we work on our bylaw.
So I'm hearing that your concern would be around increasing the penalties. So you'd like to understand what they are and where they could go and
Yeah,
what's happening across at least Southwest Nova's.
yeah.
So that will be
Those lines.
We'll make-
in the item, we'll wait
Yeah,
for
we don't have that info in front of us right now.
Anyway, but-
We'll, I'll make that a notice.
That's what I
Notice
mean.
of motion when time comes.
Okay, good now. Yes,
I was at just to inform you, I was at a policy meeting in Digby on Tuesday, with Waste Check, and we were going over the municipal, some of the bylaws we'd like to, I say bylaws, policies that we'd like to bring into the municipality so they could accept them, and the fines, and that we went over the whole issue, and they've been bumped up, and we should have it at our next Waste Check meeting to pass to each unit, so
Perfect.
we'll be looking for that.
okay, good. So you're fine with that then?
Yeah.
Okay. Next item, Domtex demolition budget update.
This one's mine.
That's
Very-
yours.
Very quick, Mr. Chair, just, and Councillor Surratt, being the chair of the waste park, is very much aware of this. At a previous meeting, I had indicated that, well, Guy had indicated that there was over $1 million in tipping fees. That bill will be closer to 44,000 for the 3 units. So that will just, our portion of that will be a third. And essentially, the waste park will forgive the tipping fees because there's sufficient funds at that organization to pay for a C&D landfill or an increase or an expansion of the C&D landfill. Right now, we don't need it immediately. I think it was at 60-70% full or something like that.
It's about 60% full.
Yeah, so we don't need to do it right away, probably in the next couple of years, we may have to do that. And so we have a little side agreement with the municipality of Yarmouth, just to protect their concern around if we don't give them the money now and we do capital improvements later, they would pay 41% or 40%, whereas it would have otherwise would have been 30%, 33%. Anyway, it was treating them unfairly. So we said, okay, that's fine. Let's we'll do a separate agreement to address that issue.
Just to cover this issue. Yeah.
And that's the update. So we won't see a major. We might see the budget go over the 950, but it won't be significantly over.
Right.
Just something with, the Domtex building, what's been done there, is that finished? I'm trying to remember, we're not, there's still gonna be some film there.
There's going to be some. Yes, there's electrical work. There's other things that need to be done to secure both sides, so it's not completely finished. One of the benefits of having a lot of that come off the property is that we can actually, we spent more we moved more product to the tipping fee than we initially thought we would, but it's not on the property, and so the property is a lot more buildable for future use.
Okay. Okay, next item, Port of Yarmouth. That's all it says, but I guess it's to do with whether or not we want to get out of it, is that correct? Or do we, or not that we're not in it, right?
Well, we're not, well,
We are.
we're paying a third because it's part of the industrial commission, but what the town and municipality, what the industrial commission staff is talking about is divesting those assets out to a third party. And so the question is whether or not the municipality of Argyle wants in on that ownership in any way, shape, or form.
Okay.
So I put it here because, and I don't really have any information to support it, which is why there's nothing there, but other than the fact that historically, we never actually did support that. It kind of happened to be transferred into the industrial commission, right? So I don't think it's something you have to make a decision on right now, but I think it's something that that you should at least have a discussion about either now or in the future, so that we can tell our partners if whatever's happening, that, you know, what our position is around that.
It's gonna be,
So,
did you have, you had,
A question, so that all council knows, the Port of Yarmouth also includes the school board building, and that is, might be worth 1.5 million. So with the divestiture of the port, if it happens, that, if I'm right on that 1.5 million building will go with the ports.
yes,
Go with the port.
it's a port asset.
It's a port asset. So we could be losing our share of 1.5 million if we let it go to divestiture. But you're right, that's probably a question
I think that what we'd have to do is take a look at whether or not we injected of our own money in the port. And so if we injected our own money in the port, and say for instance, that that building was sold, or something happened to that building, that you're able to recuperate your 1.5 million, there'd be an argument, I would think, to say, well, we put in 80,000 or something, we should get that back. Or it should stay within the industrial commission to be used. I think there's two parts to the decision. One is how much needs to stay behind for all of us, and then the rest goes somewhere else, and that's it. It's gone. Like, we don't have a right to it anymore, and nor would we carry the liability or obligation that would accompany some of those assets as well.
There's a huge amount of money, as Richard and Nick all know, on the port to be spent on the wharves. A huge amount of money.
Yeah.
In the millions. Yeah. So, you know, I think it's a good thing that we, anyhow, everything we pack bags out of there, but anyhow, that's fine.
And that's,
Yes.
and that's basically how we ended up being involved with the ports, was through the school board building back in the day, right?
It was when they determined that the Port of Yarmouth could not be incorporated in a separate organization. Initially, the plan was, it's gonna be Port of Yarmouth. Who's in? And so Argyle said, we're out. And Yarmouth and Town of Yarmouth said, we're in. And when the assets got transferred from the federal government to that organization, one of the things that happened was, whoops, we don't have a tax exemption, property tax exemption on this property. Now, if that would have happened today, that would have been easy. All you'd have to do is do an exemption, because we can exempt nonprofit organizations. But back then, you couldn't. You had to have a private member's bill, or you couldn't actually do it. But the Industrial Commission had that protection. So that's why the asset went from the Port of Yarmouth to the Industrial Commission. But intentional or not, when that happened, and we became a 1/3 owner of the Industrial Commission, therefore we became 1/3 owner of the port assets. That's how we got into it. So it was like the door was closed, but it came in through the window, right? And so it really upset a lot of people at the time, and there's still that lingering kind of, oof. Plus, you know, most of the conversation, as for those of you who haven't been part of the meetings, is the fact that it's very difficult for the municipality of Argyle to be part owner of the Port of Yarmouth when there's no port in Argyle that has that ownership.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
so that has been the debate that has gone back and forth. Is that fair?
Yeah.
And honestly, with my experience, it's tough to get into that port. It's not even managed at the level that it's supposed to be. It's managed by tight-knit group of boats that fish from there, and it's tough. It's a tough place to be a member of, and we shouldn't be part of it. There's no advantage for us to be part of it.
I'm ready to
I
say
agree, I agree.
I've seen it numerous times,
1,000 times.
1,000 times at our industrial commission, and they're moving forward with the new management board of stakeholders and probably members from the town and the district of Yarmouth municipality. And they know our intentions, so I mean, I don't think they should be waiting any longer. They should
No.
get it official and,
if that's the case, then we
Yeah.
can make a motion now, is what you're
I can
saying.
make the motion
Second.
right now that we want municipality of Argyle wants not be part of the new management board for
Right.
the Port of Yarmouth.
I second that.
So just to clarify the motion, so until that happens, so So you want that to happen, and then you want to not be part of that after it happens,
Right.
is what I'm hearing. So what your motion is saying is, we don't want a part of it once it happens, but that could be delayed indefinitely, right? So,
What I'm worried about is gonna be some major spending on, not capital, but, maintenance. There's a lot of maintenance that has to be done. And, we're gonna be, for 1/3 of that, it's been going on for years. And there's some major maintenance needs to be done, let alone all the capital work's gonna be done. That's gonna take major dollars from the federal government. But, so, I want out as fast as we can, and I don't wanna spend any more money on
Agreed.
I
it.
agree.
Even if there is spending in the next 2 months or 8 months or a year, I wanna be done with it.
Because at this point, we cannot get out. It's part of our, it's part
Of the industrial.
It's part of the
commission.
industrial commission, which we are part of it. We own it whether we want to or we
So
don't.
why can't we get out?
Because it's part of the, it's part
Part of
of,
the whole
you
thing.
can't get out until they remove it from the
That's part of
industrial.
1/3 of
How
the.
long is that gonna take?
well, that's the point I'm trying to make on your motion. Your motion doesn't give any time frame. So oftentimes, what's common practice is if your intention is to leave something, a lot of the common practices is you give a year's notice, right? So you could give a year's notice to say, we'll be there for the next budget, right? Which you have the opportunity to influence because you're a 1/3 owner. And then after that year, it has to leave, and/or we're no longer responsible financially for that. Now, I think as long as you make your intentions clear and when they come into play, then, you can't reasonably ask them to say, you've got 2 months, get it out of here, right? They're gonna need a little bit of time to do that.
No, but from the indication I'm getting, the new management board should be in place by spring, late spring, from what I was told, but you know how things work, doesn't usually work out that way.
So maybe your motion would say the earlier of the creation of the board and 12 months?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be, because the board could be delayed forever, and then your motion doesn't actually come into play. That's all I'm saying. The motion is well-intentioned, but I'm afraid it may not be as specific as it could be.
So what happens in between the 12 months, if we give a notice of 12 months to be out of there, what happens if they spend $2 million? They decide to spend $2 million on something around them walls. Are we responsible for that also?
Well, you'd be responsible for 1/3 of the amount.
Yes.
But they could not spend it without approval of the board. So,
We wouldn't accept any large capital investments in the next little while.
But we'd be outvoted because we're only 1/3 of the board too. So you take 6 of them vote against 3.
So would that be put down in that motion? That we are not, like you said, that we will not be responsible for a huge capital investment?
But we already tied,
Binded by the rules.
we're already tied in to the 1 ARC. And just a point I'd like to make before we go any further, we can't pick and choose to get out of something until that divestiture, if that divestiture is not done, we can't go and pick and choose, okay, we're out of that part and we're staying in this part. I don't think we can. We can pick and choose.
that's right. So, your other option here today is that you could obtain legal advice, but that you could make your intentions clear, and then have the lawyer come in and help you with your options around that.
That would make sense.
I'll withdraw the motion if the seconder agrees until we get some legal advice.
I'll withdraw that.
On how to proceed, is that what you're recommending?
Well,
Well, I think-
it would be, you can state your intentions that you no longer want to be a part of the port. I think you can do that by motion, and that how that gets executed would be that you're actually tasking myself to get legal advice for you to do that. So I think a motion is still great, because you're actually telling your partners what your intentions are officially,
Okay.
and that you're gonna seek legal advice.
Yeah.
So,
Make that
Because
motion.
we're part of the industrial commission, that's what binds us to the.
Yes.
that's right. We own the pie.
So, okay, so can we get out of the industrial commission?
Eventually, there's gonna be nothing left in it. Hot mill's gone. There's only gonna be the
Clinics.
medical
What
clinics,
kind
and
of
that will
procedure is
probably.
that? to get out of the industrial commission?
I'd have to get legal advice to, I mean, it's not a municipal corporation. There's no agreement that binds us necessarily to fund the industrial commission. However, I'd have to get legal advice. Right, the risk is what would happen with the clinics if we walked away, right?
So where are we at right now? We've made a motion, we've retracted a motion. Is the motion still on the table?
The motion, I'll leave the motion there. The motion is to inform our partners that we intend to leave the port, the Port Authority when it's divested to a user group.
Private group or user group.
I'll still second
Is that somewhere close to what?
Yeah, and, you know, pending legal advice to do it properly.
Right.
How about that,
That's
Chris?
true.
Chris, you got that?
Do.
Good.
I like it.
Okay. Any questions or comments?
You need to read the motion.
Yeah, go ahead.
The motion reads, it is moved by Richard Donaldson and seconded by Roderick Murphy Jr. to inform the Industrial Commission the municipality of Argyle intends to leave the Port of Yarmouth once it is created, pending legal advice.
Yeah.
Is that accurate, CEO?
Yeah, that should be good.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely good, definitely. Yeah.
It's crystal clear.
It's crystal clear.
We've all heard the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Minded? Carried. Next item is just correspondence and information. We have a letter from Prime Minister, Municipal Awareness Video.
Cannabis.
No? Western Rand investment opportunities and strategies. Waste Park update. Municipal officers expense allowance update. 2017 SPDCA annual report. 2018 assessment roll media kit, Property Valuation Services Corporation. The Western Wren January 2018 newsletter. Hubbard's Point and Area Community Development Association Comfort Center response. Any of those that anybody want to discuss? That I wouldn't mind making a comment on the last one.
9H?
For the H, for the Hubbard's Point Community Development Association. They've been approached by EMO, whether or not they would be interested in making that you probably all read the letter.
Oh, that's great.
And I think it's a great idea. You know, it wouldn't cost much to make it into a comfort center, because, you know, I mean, generator and whatever, and I think it would be a great idea as well.
Good idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So would the generator be the responsibility of EMO?
it would be the responsibility of maybe the municipality.
We would, I mean, be difficult for us to rely on the volunteers to make sure that, like, maintenance is done on a regular basis. We would expect the volunteers, if it was to be placed there, to arrange for its proper storage.
That would be it.
And the fact of the matter is the Hubbard's Point Area Community Hall has not applied for our $15,000
Yet.
special grant yet. They have intentions of doing that,
Yeah,
and so we
the
figured,
intention is there.
we figured if they're gonna do that, then we should be looking at that now.
I think so.
Yeah, sounds good.
It'll have to be wired in too, you just can't get it.
Exactly.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So any sort of like electrical panel changes that would have to be required for heat pumps or whatever, it would be the time to consider whether or not a generator should be.
Yeah, exactly.
So Janine is doing the work to price out what that might look like, and then the results of that work will come to you as part of your capital budgeting,
Exactly.
okay?
Okay?
Great idea.
Okay. Financial requests. Where am I here? There. We have Comité d'école consultatif de Pubnico West, and that's to, that was for Glenn.
I'd like to make the motion.
I would
Second.
that. So that's for
Okay.
the school insurance program.
Yes. And is there an amount here? I think it's $500.
Yeah, it is.
It is $500, so it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary-minded? Nay, carried. Next one is mine, Hubbard's Point Community Center,
So moved.
and that's again $500. So moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Alright,
Contrary-minded? Carried. The Abrams River Wharf
So
Association,
moved.
Second.
alright,
all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary-minded? Carried. Club Social des Îles,
So moved.
Second.
moved and seconded.
alright.
Contrary-minded? Carried. Yeah, they're getting ahead of me here. And my last one is from the Amirs Hill and Hubbard's Point Volunteer Fire Department. It's not actually located in my district, but it certainly serves my district, which is basically the same as what we do for the East Kent Fire Department. So I'm okay, even though it's not my district, and now we can do that anyway, so. So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary-minded? Carried. Agenda topics for next meeting. Calvin, you had one.
Yeah, and it won't be for, next meeting is, what's the date of the
The
next meeting?
13th.
13th, okay, I'll be out of the country, so how about for the next committee of the whole, which would be the end of February?
End of February.
Yep.
27.
So
Yes,
that's, I guess, notice of motion
yes.
or agenda type for looking at the fines for the legal dumping.
Okay.
Yeah. That'll give you guys time to. Good.
And no other question period? Anybody have any questions? Was there some, Alex, did you keep track of if there was anything coming from the,
Public? Nothing.
nothing there? So, we have an in-camera session, and I guess we need a motion to go
Move to
in
go in
camera.
camera.
It's been moved, and we need a second to
Second.
go in camera. All in favor?
Aye.
We'll be in camera.